We're joined by really an American hero, William Binney, former technical director of the National Security Agency, one of the most famous code breakers in U.S. history, and the equivalent of a multi-star general when he was heading up that agency. He's also been a whistleblower to Congress, been SWAT teamed, been targeted, been persecuted, but never charged with anything because it was all intimidation. Exposefacts.org, agoodamerican.org is the award-winning film he's in. He was also the main technical director and fact director for Oliver Stone's incredible film, Snowden. So much of what we now know about the illegal spy grid being used against us for the political class is thanks to him, Mr. Drake, Sybil Edmonds, and many others. But he is the chief whistleblower out there, ladies and gentlemen. And he's going to be talking about pgknowledge.eu today and some of the important work he's doing. But first off, he hasn't talked a lot about this, but today he said he's ready to talk about it. In light of the whole Russiagate investigation, he wants to get into that and his meeting with the CIA director, Mr. Pompeo, a few weeks ago. So we're going to talk about how that meeting took place and as much as he can now reveal to this audience today. So thank you so much, William Binney, for joining us to discuss this.
Well, thanks for having me, Alex.
Well, you've got the floor. Where would you like to start?
Well, I think we should start with the research we've been doing on the data allegedly coming from a hack by the Russians in to the DNC server. That back in, this was the data that was made available from Guccifer 2. That talked about the leak or the hack that he called a hack on the 5th of July of 2016. That data he made available for us to look at, so we started looking at it, and the first thing we found was the speeds were rather high for a transfer across the web to Europe from the U.S. In fact, the speed, I was here in Europe with Duncan Campbell reviewing all this data again, and we found that the highest speed that data ran from was taken down off the server, supposedly. This is all alleged now. So it was 49.1 megabytes per second, which is roughly a little over 4 times the rate that we could get by a transfer. We also attempted to transfer data across the Atlantic to Europe, to various places in Amsterdam, the UK. One of the fellows even looked at transferring it to Belgrade and also Albania, but it was pointless to even try because the network couldn't even handle it anywhere near it there. So the highest we got was roughly 1/4 the speed necessary to transfer the data, which meant it was impossible to go across the net. But it is, however, compatible with a download to a thumb drive. So if you had a USB thumb drive, you could download it at those speeds.
So what you're saying, as a technical expert who tested it, this was an inside job, just like Snowden doing on a thumb drive at point-blank range. That's the speeds, that this was basically impossible to be an outside hack, which is what we know from British ambassadors, from spies, from other leaks. Can you then quantify why Trump wanted you to meet with Pompeo to explain this to him?
Well, Director Pompeo said to me when I first sat down, he said, the president said I should talk to you if I wanted to get facts about the Russiagate. Now that was really a shocking statement to me, because what that really says to me is the intelligence agencies aren't even telling the president or the head of the CIA the facts in the case. I mean, if he has to ask me what the facts are, why aren't the intelligence agencies, the FBI, NSA, CIA, the members of the CIA, telling even the president or the chief of the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency?
And I know it's all classified. You can't get into it, but a lot of this is public now. The president has the code keys. He's got authorization. He could go in and see all this, but of course it was the Obama holdovers, we know, up until Trump got into office, that were still there with the keys, spying on the president-elect. We now know that.
Yes. For example, early on, when the conversation between the President Trump and the President of Mexico and Australia were released, I mean, that's a clear indication that kind of information to me came from NSA, because any communications of the president leaving the White House are encrypted. So that agency that has the keys and provides the equipment and the keys for the president to communicate is NSA. So they would be able to decrypt and translate all those conversations. So they certainly are a prime suspect for releasing that. But let me get back to that hack in July of 2016. There's more to it than just that. When we looked at the data, there were two batches of releases. The main one was dated the 5th of July. There was a later one dated the 1st of September, also from Guccifer 2. But when you looked at them, and if you only looked at minutes, seconds, and milliseconds, those two data sets merge. They merge, fit right together like a glove and on a hand. So that you basically would have one continuous set of information. So it means to us that Guccifer 2 is playing games, and that this wasn't even a hack. You don't even know if it was a hack of the DNC or if it was something downloaded, transferred somewhere else, and then downloaded again. And
sir, I know this is simple for you as a top expert, but just to explain, not only transfer rate showed had to be done point blank at the computer, at the server itself, but also the data, the way it was taken down and put down together, was all done together, congruent at one time.
Yeah, and it basically says that Guccifer 2 is playing a game with us, right? They're playing a game with us and everybody else.
Because it's not the Russians that can be inside these secret facilities, obviously, getting the info.
Yeah, well, that plus all of the indications are that it wasn't even a hack at all in any way, shape, or form.
Wow, so you explained this to Pompeo. Please continue.
Yes, and also I said that if members of Congress are going to call this an act of war, then they ought to do like President John F. Kennedy did and President Reagan. Kennedy released the photographs of the missiles in Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis because it was something that was very serious. And also when the Russians shot down the South Korean airline over Sakhalin Island, he released the ground-to-air control of the fighters, where the ground control ordered the shoot down of the plane. So those were serious situations, and they basically classified information so that they could show how serious this situation was and prove it to the American public and everyone else.
Incredible. Now, I know you're a scientist, a computer scientist, so you just go off the facts, but just big picture, looking at this with William Binney, who's blown all this wide open, the president wanted you to go talk to the head of the CIA. He doesn't even have the keys to the NSA. He can get into all this. They've got him sequestered, but he's getting enough info to know he needs to talk to you, showing, again, the whole Russia thing's made up. It was an inside job of people trying to expose the criminality of Hillary and what was going on.
Yeah, and there's really no guarantee that even if he asks for all the information about Russiagate that's held by NSA or the FBI, that they'll even give it to him, because they don't, if they don't want to give away information to anybody, they can keep it and hide it internally. They don't have to share it with anyone. I mean, couldn't
the president appoint you as a special investigator, and you've got the clearances to go in there and investigate for him?
Well, I don't have the clearances anymore, but
the president could get those for you.
Yes, he could. Yes, that's true.
Would you take that job if the president authorized you to?
If he wanted me to do that, I would do that. Yes, absolutely. And
that'd be their worst nightmare. I mean, we can't trust the former head of the NSA. Who can we trust? I mean, it's just a bunch of politicos in there with the code keys. Samantha Powers, all of them in there, meeting with the former CIA director and everybody to set up Trump. I mean, these people have committed incredible crimes, in my view. We'll be back with William Binney, a true American hero. There's John Wayne, the actor, then there's the real John Waynes. William Binney's one of those. We'll be right back, folks. Stay with us. William Binney, the former head of actual operations of the National Security Agency, the man behind the movie Snowden, the main expert on that, is our guest this segment and next. He is on the road in Europe. He thinks his computer battery will probably last till about 45 after or so, but if it cuts out, he'll be gone. This is so huge, okay? He's one of the leading experts in the world. The president wanted him to meet with the CIA director because they're trying to understand what's going on. because this is so complex and the agencies don't tell each other a lot of information. And so here is William Binney looking at the supposed Russian hack they're saying. They've never proven Guccifer 2.0 was a Russian, but now we know what British ambassadors and others have said they've been told. They've said they've met with the supposed Guccifer and that it was a group of U.S. intelligence operatives and people that were upset about what was happening. I have had high-level contacts confirm that to me back during the election. And I know that people like Eric Prince got information that I had separately had but not released about it, and that Eric Prince knows. So all I'm saying is this is not a secret. This has been in British and German newspapers, but not really in our news. It's a huge scandal. It's the key to understanding Russiagate and how they're trying to remove our president with zero evidence. They've got NSA transcripts of General Flynn not doing anything wrong, but then an FBI agent who worked for Hillary, who's disgraced, is the one that wrote up the forms claiming what he told them didn't match the NSA spying. So this is huge, huge news and blows the whole Russia narrative wide open. William Binney, please break this down and get into other angles because, again, you're the expert.
Well, we're looking at other evidence also, that technical evidence that looks like even earlier claims might be a total sham also. So in other words, it looks like virtually all of this data has been a fabrication that's been created as a diversion, basically, so that we can pay attention. It's like we're playing the Wizard of Oz game. Pay attention. Don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. Look at all the side show that's going on. Pay attention over here. Don't look at me. So I just think that this whole thing has been a setup from the beginning. And it's being, right now, the technical evidence is starting to show that and prove that. And we'll be publishing information about that hopefully very soon.
Wow. Was your whole meeting with Pompeo, did he say it was off record, or what else can you tell us about this amazing meeting requested by the president?
No, he didn't. He didn't say it was off the record or anything. He just said he wanted to talk to me about getting. The president asked me and him to talk to me about getting facts about Russiagate. So I just told him everything I knew at the time, and we're getting more and more information that kind of corroborates everything we've been saying about it being a fabrication. We'll be adding that publicly shortly, I hope. So it's a matter of verifying everything we've done. We don't want to say something that we can't actually show and prove. So,
wow. Well, I know that you've received classified awards. You can't talk about those, but it's been reported that you've gotten some of the biggest awards in the country you can get. I mean, you were running operations against the Russians, and so you'd be the expert to investigate the Russians. But from your spy chief gravitas, when you say it looks like it's a setup beyond just an inside job, without getting into statecraft and things, as an expert, what are you seeing? Well,
there are people in other countries involved, like in the UK with the supposed report from the British intelligence, that kind of thing, and also internally. If you believe Cy Hirsch, what he's saying is people in the FBI know exactly who leaked the data, and they're not talking about that. So there are people in the FBI, people in lower ranks in the CIA, also people in NSA who are involved in all of this. So those are the three agencies, are the main ones who made up the intelligence community assessment, where they claimed 17 intelligence agencies. Well, it was really only 3. And it was hand-picked people from those 3 to come up with a predetermined outcome, which is what they did. And they wrote a 14-page ICA, Intelligence Community Assessment paper, that started out by saying we have high confidence that, and it's our judgment that we have high confidence that that the Russians did the hack. But then at the very bottom, page 13, it says, please don't interpret our judgment to mean that we have absolute facts to prove that this is absolutely true. So what they're saying is, this whole report was a big sham, and they had no evidence whatsoever, and nothing to back up any claim they were making, and it was just another fabrication. So it just shows you the extent of the organization behind this charade.
Well, I know where to look out of these 17 agencies. It's that handful of people that put out the hoax that all 17 agencies all concurred, and then who put out these scurrilous fake reports. I mean, I think you start with them in your investigation of who really cooked all this garbage up. If you were speaking to the president, and he obviously listens to what you have to say and what you write, what would you say he needs to do next?
I would say he needs to clean house. He's got to start firing people who are in charge of these agencies and replace them with people who will do a proper job. That means cleaning out the internally cleaning out the agencies and making sure they start to obey the Constitution, which they're not doing now. And that includes the Department of Justice. I'm not excluding them either. They're a part of this charade too. In one form or another, they're covering up for the people who are involved in this. Because if the FBI knows who did it, they also know, at least some of them. Now, whether they're telling anybody, that's another story.
I wonder how they think they're going to get away with it when it's the Clintons that have this huge history with the Russians and Uranium One and their foundation. And then you've got Trump surveilled. We learned by Obama when he first got into office. I was also on the list. That was a whole data leak that came out of federal law enforcement. And there were hundreds of thousands of names and phone numbers of mine that were private, and I even had some of Trump's private numbers. Those were his numbers at Mar-a-Lago, and also one of his private numbers at Trump Tower that I never even had the nerve to use, but we got the list, and I was like, wow, that's the number I got for him at Mar-a-Lago. So they were illegally surveilling him all these years and intensified during the campaign, and then they can't even find anything. That shows he's got a pretty good record if they're illegally spying on him and nothing's there.
Yeah, but it also shows all the illegality that they've been involved in, including violations of the First, Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments, trying to use his communications without warrants against him in terms of charging him with something. That is a clear violation of the founding principles of our nation, and this is fundamentally treason at the highest levels, in my view.
You're right. William Binney's our guest. I think it's fair to say that the house of cards is coming down. I mean, it's coming out. They surveilled him. It's in the Flynn documents. They got caught lying. So what do we do legally now to make sure that they end up getting in trouble before they launch the next part of their fiction, as Ron Paul called it last week, as you called it, a charade, where they're planning to indict the president for obstruction of justice. The word is as early as Christmas. And I reported that Friday. NBC News yesterday said that is the word. They're looking to indict the president. We'll be back with William Binney.
Bombshell information revealed this week could undermine the integrity of the Russia collusion investigation. Peter Strzok was the top FBI official assigned to Mueller's special counsel. For nearly 4 months, it's been kept secret that the FBI agent exchanged anti-Trump and pro-Hillary Clinton text messages with his mistress. The reported text messages show a bias that cannot be ignored. Strzok also led the investigation of Hillary Clinton's private email server, and he played a direct role in the statement that ultimately cleared Clinton of criminal wrongdoing. Electronic records show that Strzok changed Comey's early draft language describing Clinton's actions as grossly negligent to extremely careless. Strzok was also one of 2 FBI agents who interviewed General Flynn. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes chided the Justice Department and the FBI for not disclosing why Strzok had been removed from the special counsel 3 months ago. The chairman said, at this point, these agencies should be investigating themselves. Leanne McAdoo, Infowars.com.
And I was just on the website pgknowledge.eu and The Good American and a bunch of others, and they've got the documents and the breakdowns of the fraud, that it was an internal deal. There was no Russian hacking. They're just involved in a giant hoax, and they want to basically have it where any surveillance of their illegal activity is supposedly Russian because they're committing all these crimes. But, again, William Binney is our guest. pgknowledge.eu, the film, A Good American. In the 9 minutes we have left, sir, please break down the great work you're doing in Europe. Again, that's so important. The president asked you to meet with the CIA director, and just other key facts that folks should be made aware of.
Well, first of all, I would recommend that they take a look at A Good American, the movie. It's only something like $4 to look at Netflix and so on web, and you can access it there. It really gives you the background. My career in NSA give you the idea how intelligence works, but also it leads you into understanding how they're doing this mass surveillance and what it means and how it can all be pulled together. And then, of course, it also gives you the idea of how they're violating the Constitution and everybody's rights, even though they don't know it. But they shouldn't go around saying things like, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I have nothing to fear, simply because, you know, they're not really free to have free thoughts and be creative and innovative without having the government watch you. Because if you start doing something that is not compatible with their thinking, they'll come after you, just like they did us. And so that they made it impossible fundamentally for us to do the kind of analytic job that we had developed inside NSA and do a similar job outside commercially even with other departments of government. They wouldn't let us do it. They got us fired and contracts terminated. And it was a whole series of things they did, first at the NGO and then at INSCOM, then at Customs and Border Protection. And so everywhere we went, they made sure that we couldn't succeed at that job. So eventually, and then the Department of Justice started coming after us, trying to put us in jail with fabricated evidence, and we stopped all that by telling them that we had exculpatory data and evidence, then that they were doing their effort was malicious prosecution, and then they finally left us alone. So in the end, you know, after so many years of that, we basically found an opportunity over here in Europe where they value privacy more. And we decided to come over here and do this job over here, put together systems that will allow us to analyze massive amounts of data and pull out only what's necessary and what's relevant and make sense of massive data, which we could have done in the U.S. About 20 years ago, but they denied it and kept us from doing it. So we're over here now doing that. And we're looking at commercial applications, insurance and banking and all kinds of applications on massive data around Europe.
So basically, the trailblazing research you did that could actually target real terrorists, real criminals, and not violate everybody's privacy at the same time, really stopping disasters. You've run into folks in Europe that are actually looking at allowing you to actually try to build that?
Yeah, and they're actually helping us by, you know, they're organizing and we're forming a company and they're backing us and financing it. So, yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. A good American is amazing.
I had to come over here to do it, you know? What's the matter with America?
Well, as you warned previously as a whistleblower and then in interviews and here and then, of course, the movie Snowden, the political class is making hundreds of billions of dollars off this giant super spy grid that spies on everything, but then it's so massively over-targeted, it then does nothing to actually stop real problems. It violates everybody's rights and then lets the political class use it in political campaigns, not just against Republicans, but the Democrats and the CIA have used it against Dianne Feinstein and others, and it's all admitted they've illegally done it. And it's now this nightmare with a new super class with godlike omnipresent surveillance powers dragnetting their political opposition. It's just astounding.
Yeah, and they're acting like they have no respect for the law and they're above the law and nobody's going to do anything about it. I mean, here you have these people lying directly in the Congress and everybody knows it. They got caught at it and still nothing happens. Now, what is the matter with the Department of Justice? Why aren't they holding these people accountable? I mean, they certainly do that with whistleblowers who are exposing the problems and the crimes. So anybody who exposes something, you step on them, and everybody else who commits them, you give them retroactive immunity.
I was about to say, Loretta Lynch, first they lied about the tarmac meeting. Then when it came out, it was totally illegal. He was under criminal investigation by her. The FBI documents have now been released by the FBI. They're trying to find out if it was a cop or whoever to get them fired to cover up the crime. They're admittedly obstructing justice right there. It's just incredible. And then the very Mueller that covered up Uranium One and criminal investigations and red-handed Russian payoffs for our strategic uranium, talk about takeover. He kills the investigation, and now he's the guy trying to indict Trump.
Right, and you can also don't forget that Mueller and Comey were two of the main players back in as early as 2001 and 2004 in the Department of Justice and the FBI, who actually were using the Stellar Wind program, the illegally acquired data, against individuals inside the United States for common criminal activity.
And, of course, then they did the parallel constructions of the DEA and the rest of it.
Yep.
And then so they were in charge, I guess, later when you got SWAT teamed too, right? I mean, these are monsters.
That's right. They're basic criminals. That's all.
Gosh. And they know it's criminal what they did, and it's all come out. Wow. Well, I tell you, if we can just get rid of these guys.
That's why I'm calling our Department of Justice now our Department of Just Us.
Wow. Well, sir, I'm just blown away by your courage and Mr. Drake's courage and all the others and what you've gone through and how they tried to put you guys in prison. That's a whole other story. But then Patriots Inside Justice would leak that you'd been set up. So there is a God, there is justice, but good men and women have to stand up and have to tell the truth. And I hope this whole Clinton, globalist, Bush, establishment swamp face sucker can finally be removed off our face. And I think it says a lot about Trump that he had Pompeo meet with you and that he's the target of these people. I mean, I think it says a lot about Trump that he's doing that.
Yeah, I think they're really afraid of him and what he'll be able to achieve. They're also afraid of him because he might see through them, which I think he does, and start to break up their game. That's one of the things they don't want to happen. I mean, the thing that they fear most is sunlight on the activities they've been performing, and they want to keep it. That's why the mainstream media is one of their main targets. So they won't broadcast any other opinions or views other than the ones they want shared. So, I think the basic problem with why they hate Trump so much is because they fear him so much.
That's right. And as you've said, now Google, Facebook, Twitter, they're using NSA style tools to spy on liberal, conservative, you name it, outside speech, and then censor us in real time, not just keep you off mainstream news, not just keep me off, but then censor us in real time, not because we're fake news, but because we're researched real news.
Yeah, that's right, and you can't have that in a controlled environment. That's also what one of the things I said about the bulk surveillance is that one of the main objectives is population control. Now, also to make that happen, you have to control the narrative that's fed to the larger population of the country, and that takes the mainstream media, and that's basically what's happening. They are in fact controlled by the government, the shadow government, and those who want to control the narrative.
And now they admit they want to sew it up in free speech and authoritarianism now that they have their spy grid in place. This is really happening like history shows it would. Well, you're really a hero. I know you don't want to hear that, but you really are a hero, and you've been vindicated and everything. You're a real class act. William Binney, thank you for your time and Godspeed.
Well, thank you, Alex.
Folks, learn more at goodamerican.org or pgknowledge.eu. It's up to us now to spread the word. Thank you, Doctor.